The following podcast contains spoilers and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to Anarchy, the show that takes a critical look at animated features of all kinds to determine the good from the bad. And Happy New Year, everybody! The first episode of Animated Anarchy of 2017. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Mike.
And welcome.
And goodbye.
and goodbye. We're done with this. Hi. We're here again.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
The holidays.
The New Year's.
The election.
I wanted to be the only podcast ever to not even mention the election at all, but there you go.
Too late. Here's the thing. We decided, I think, to begin the year, we wanted to start, especially after doing 8 crazy nights. Oh my God. We wanted to start the year off with something positive, a nice, happy.
We wanted to start off on a good note, and we certainly did. We watched
Care Bears 2. That's right, Care Bears 2, the second of the Care Bears films of the trilogy.
No, we decided because I think in the following months we have like a couple things on our plate that we're probably going to be talking about, which are very unique.
Is that your way of saying awful?
Yeah. It's a nice way of saying awful, I suppose.
I think we really have to, that's just it, for this show, we have to balance, like, we watch like 2 awful movies in a row. Can we do a good one and talk about how good filmmaking can be for a while?
Yeah, exactly. And also I think that there seems to be this consensus that we only talk about bad movies.
Yeah.
So whenever there's a good movie that pops up in our in like the timeline or on an episode list or something, people goes like, "Wait, you didn't like that?" And I'm like, "No, well, listen to it." We actually talk about good movies as well, and we like the movies. And we're also in Michael's place.
That's why it sounds like a chamber, because I live in a cave.
And his cat Maya, which is a fluffy little poof ball, just has absolutely no regard for anything, and just it's like in everyone's face. So. And
now she's licking a Carlos Mencia DVD. I can't believe I actually said that. I have, just to explain, no, I don't like Carlos Mencia. Years ago, a friend of mine gave me a bunch of DVDs for my birthday. You know, when someone's like, I like Carlos Mencia, so I'm going to buy someone things that I like. And he bought me both seasons of Mind of Mencia on DVD. And I'm like, and I went through my DVDs and I'm like, I do not want these. These are terrible.
Well, earlier today, it was like, I asked for a glass of water. It's like, hey, okay, I need a coaster. Hey, would you like something like...
do you want my Rugrats coasters?
Rugrats or Carlos Mencia? And I was like, wait, there's Carlos Mencia's...
Coasters? So I just took the DVDs and I used them as coasters until I get legitimate coasters. So, and there was some water on it, and Maya just started licking the condensation off the Mind of Mencia DVDs. I feel like I got to take you to the vet after we're done.
Yeah, she has something wrong with her.
She just ingested a little bit of water soaked in unfunny, racist humor.
Yeah, so this is your decision, by the way.
I made this choice today. We decided we haven't done a Disney movie in a while, since probably what? What was the last Disney movie we
watched? Oh my gosh, what was the last Disney movie we talked about? I don't even remember.
Was it...
Well, folks, you can probably just yell at us while we're talking about this.
Yeah, because we don't.
Because it was probably the episode that you listened to last, or something.
Yeah, but we don't have our like backlog, and I forgot what movies. I was about to say we should do a movie. We should do Sword in the Stone. And then I was like, wait a minute, we already did that.
Yeah, we did.
It's like,
well, there you go. There's one we did. Yeah. There's also Jungle Book 2. I don't know if that counts.
Oh, geez. But we said, you know what? Let's go back as far back as we can go, but not quite that far back. So we ended up doing. Pinocchio.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, it just came, just as of today. I mean, when you guys watch this, I don't know when it'll be out, but they just came out with it on Blu-ray. Re-released it on high-def Blu-ray today. I guess that's why it was on my mind. So I'm like, let's just do Pinocchio. Let's do a movie that's an artistic masterpiece, a perennial classic. And,
Yeah. No, and I thought that was great to do anyway, because honestly, it's like it's been a while since I've seen it as well. It's one of those movies that you just kind of... Because, what was your first experience with this movie, first off?
Being scared shitless, because I remember seeing this movie and loving it, because I love Jiminy Cricket. and I love the movie. But there was so many things that scared the ever-loving crap out of me, which is something that's amazing about this Disney movie, is that it's so dark. It's such a dark movie.
Yeah, the colors are pretty muted.
No, I mean it's dark
most of the time.
The entertainment, the movie itself is dark. It's got really serious tones and it's scary.
Yeah,
and it's frightening. It feels like an '80s 80s fantasy films are dark too, but like this one, it's the second full-length Disney movie, and it set this bar really high for films after, like sidekick characters and music and artistic, the artistry of it.
Yeah. Well, something that I remember specifically, because I grew up with. Holy crap! Sorry, the volume probably spiked right there because I'm playing with it.
I think it's because Maya's also playing with the soundboard.
This is going to be a very interesting episode because I don't usually record. Oh my god, I don't usually record. So please forgive the awkwardness of the recording here. I can't cut this out.
I don't feel like that.
Yeah. But yeah, no. I don't usually record at Michael's place, but yeah, it's a different setup and everything. But yeah, no. What I remember from this movie specifically is that the one scene that they would always show on the Disney Channel was the scene where Lampwick turns into a donkey. And that always seemed really odd to me. Like, of all the scenes in Pinocchio, why would they show that scene? Because it's creepy. It's creepy and scary, and it's just one of those scenes that kind of, like, traumatizes you immediately as you see it.
Yeah. It's like, what is this, from All of Us to All of You, like the Christmas shows? And it's like, oh, we're going to take a trip to Pleasure Island. Ah! Just like people being turned into donkeys.
Yeah.
I think, I have a story about being scared by this movie. Years and years and years and years ago, when I was very little, I loved going to the Disney store as a kid. It was my favorite place to go. And in the back of the store, they had, they usually have a big pyramid, a big pile of stuffed animals in the back part of the store. And the store was decorated. They had like the big figurines, fiberglass figures of the characters and stuff. And then they had fake animation drawings on the ceiling that were really big and painted. Mm-hmm. And I remember running to the back of the store one day. I think I was about 6 or 7. And the door slams because my neighbor's next door.
The cat fell over.
I know, I did too. I wouldn't be surprised. But I went to the back of the store and I'm playing with the stuffed animals and I look straight up at the ceiling, which is sort of has almost like a dome-like shape. And I just see, and it's huge. The drawing is huge. It's of the coachman going, boys, with the teeth and the red, and it was done in red pencil, so the whole drawing was red.
Yeah.
And I remember just dropping the stuffed animal that I had in my hand and running out of that store, and I was afraid to go into that store for years. I was so afraid of that damn image. And whenever I see the movie and I knew that scene was coming up, I'd turn away. And it scared me. But I love the movie, but I kept going back to it, even though it scared the living... That and like Fantasia scared the bejesus out of me as a kid. Yeah. And I still was like... And Pink Elephants and Dumbo scared the hell out of me. Yeah. All those 40s Disney movies scare the hell out of people. Snow White scares the hell out of you.
Yeah, there's a lot of scary imagery, and
Mr. Toad.
Especially for like little kids and everything. It's like, oh, it's a happy little thing, and then oh my god,
Bambi's mom, and you're like, oh god. But I think
and it's funny that in Disneyland, like the ride to Snow White is pretty much 80% dark, scary images of like the trees going out to get you. and
in Pinocchio too, it's like, watch out for the whale, Pinocchio.
Yeah,
fuck. Sorry, I don't mean to curse as Jiminy Cricket.
We're off to a great start this year, aren't we? We have like sound problems.
There's a cat.
There's a cat. Yeah. No, the cat's wonderful. But
small doses.
But yes. I'm trying to remember because I know that I did see this movie in theaters because I think there was like a special release at some point, somewhere probably like the mid 80s or something.
It was one of the first to come out on video.
That was probably it. They probably had like a special screening for it, and then they had it out on VHS and everything because there was like, my dad collected a ton of these special edition VHS. I still have like the huge like Taschen-sized book VHS special edition collection of the VHS tape. That is probably like $20 now.
And I remember hearing. I was too young to really figure out how much those things cost, but some of the early VHS tapes were like $80.
Oh hell yes!
They were super expensive.
They were
the quality was crap.
Expensive.
I remember I had the Pinocchio one, and as a kid, and the cover looks like crap. Like the image that they use on the cover, it's Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket just walking in a blue dark street.
Yeah.
And Pinocchio looks like he's had his eyes dilated at the eye doctors. He looks absolutely horrified.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so we sat down here and we watched the movie.
We watched the movie. You pointed out all the animators that died.
Yeah. Go to the credits start. I'm just like dead, Deaderino.
But here's the thing, and this is why you're such a phenomenal person on this podcast, is that you recognize every single person on that list, and you probably point out what every scene, well, like who animated what scene, who was a part of
this
which.
One was an alcoholic, he was an alcoholic, he was an alcoholic.
And you have like this library of knowledge when it comes to the animators of these classic Disney films, and to a lot of films actually.
Yeah.
But you mainly will be able to point out exactly like who is who and everything. And you were telling me, like, Milt Call was doing the Milt Call did the Jiminy.
You did a lot of Jiminy. You did like Jiminy running and putting clothes on. It's like, yeah, give the most complicated damn shots to Milt Call, and he'll animate a character talking, running, and putting on clothes at the same time. But like Ward Kimball did a lot of the Jiminy Cricket stuff, and Willie Reitman did a lot of the whale stuff, and he was a Goofy animator. So it's like, imagine animating Goofy, and then be like, what are you doing next? Well, you got to animate a giant fucking whale with like detail, and there'll be like charcoal underpainting on him. Yeah. Be really complicated.
Yeah, you're telling me he animated the mirror, the magic mirror, in Snow White,
and he did the dinosaurs in Fantasia. But he was predominantly an action animator, and then he later became a director after Walt died. He directed all the Disney movies after Walt died.
Right.
Up until like Fox and the Hound, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, but looking at that in an animator's perspective, with that kind of knowledge, I mean, that's pretty. I think that's fantastic.
Well, especially for this movie, because you look at it and you're like, even like, I want to like go through the movie with no sound, like no soundtrack, like the music. And just backgrounds. I'd love to just watch the movie with no characters on it and just backgrounds, just glory shots of these beautiful backgrounds.
that's the thing. It's like, when it comes to the backgrounds, this movie is probably the most
ornate,
beautiful, and fascinating to me.
It sets the bar so damn high.
Because it's all illustrations. Like all really well done illustrations, and they're all how are they done? Like watercolor or
they were done with a combination of stuff. But the thing about it is that they, the guy who designed the movie, Albert Herder, he was a classical like children's book illustrator.
That's exactly what I was thinking. You look at
Geppetto's workshop, at just the ornate detail, even like in his workbench, that there's splatters of paint on it, the wood grain, there's knots of wood at it.
Tons of detail.
There's some sawdust on the floor, curled up pieces of wood.
Especially since there's a lot of shots where you see it from the perspective of a little character,
so you see
like Jiminy.
Yeah.
So it's like when you have that ability to be really close up to something, you see all the little details, like there's a giant cigar, or like whatever, little bits and pieces of dust and
like even
burn marks.
You see close-ups in Geppetto's place of like either a toy or of like, God forbid, like a cigar, like a pipe, like a smoking pipe, and you'll see like a sooty edge around the hole of the pipe to see that it's been smoked in.
Yep.
Like you'll see this detail that's like, I mean, even little things. I keep never noticing it, and then I watch and I discover something new. That's what I love about some of these old movies, that you watch it again, and there's stuff you never noticed before just by looking at it again. Like I didn't know that right next to Figaro's bed, which is a beautiful looking bed. It's got a little cat on it with angel wings and all that stuff. And then next to it is a litter box that I never noticed before, with like a shovel and a pail on it, with the sand in it.
Yeah.
And you're like, I never noticed that before.
Yeah. And stuff like that is great because
who poops right next to their bed? Well, I guess the
thing is like it feels really stylistic, but very organic, like very real. It's like everything just kind of feels, like I don't know. It's hard to really pinpoint because it's a mix of both realism and fantasy in it, and that whenever I think about backgrounds, I always come back to this movie because they're so well detailed and so well executed. Just looking, I would love to just like slowly go through all of the different backgrounds in this movie, because like I've been pointing out like different things, like there was a plate in the background that had all this like weird gunk on it that just like seemed, God, that's stuff that you don't really think about, but it's there, you know.
Like even if you go like in Pleasure Island, you see like in the billiard hall there's these tables with cigars and ashtrays in it, and you even see burn marks in the tables where people put cigars leaning on the edge of a table and there's a slight burn mark where it was. Like that is like
everything feels lived in. You know, it feels like somebody has been there before, except for when Geppetto leaves to find Monstro.
To find Pinocchio,
and then it's like there's like absolutely nothing in there, and all of a sudden there's like cobwebs everywhere.
How long? Yeah, we'll
talk about that later.
But there's one thing I like looking. If you watch this movie and think about like. If you watch it from a perspective of just watching the movie, not taking it in as far as the history and the artistry, you don't notice it, but you think like in terms of the history of animation, this is like 1940, no computers, of course. Mm-hmm. It was done without computers, all done under the camera, every effect, everything was done under the camera. And then you think about 10 years before, like 10 or 12 years before, it was Steamboat Willie, black and white. They did, in the span of 10 years, they developed color and all these effects, multiplane, realistic draftsmanship, the painting, these pans, all this stuff in the span of literally like 10 years ago from now was B-movie was 10 years ago. Doesn't really feel like that long ago, does it? It feels like it feels like yesterday.
Yesterday.
You think about just the span of time, 10 years, how much stuff can improve in 10 years, and that was the biggest technological jump, at least in this medium. I mean, I think probably maybe the age of computers.
Comparative to Snow White, you don't really see. Compared to Snow White, I feel there's more detail in Pinocchio because of that fact that they are so close in a lot of areas. They venture into realms that you don't usually think about. So going into those areas, you kind of have to be a little bit imaginative and also kind of think what would be a part of this in order for it to work in this sort of setting. Like, what would you see if you were a tiny little insect walking around on the floors of a house that has been lived in, you know, that it's like, it's a shop and this person's been here for 10 years.
There's dents in this metal pail from years of...
Those are things you would have to think about. It's like, you know, the poker to the fireplace. What would that look like if it's been used, if it's been there for 10 years? So
yeah. And even like just thinking about like Snow White, they set the bar really high and they spent years just getting to the point where they do Snow White. Yeah. Now after doing Snow White, they're like, let's push it even further, and then they do something like Pinocchio. And I don't think they've ever gone more. That was to me. I like Fantasia's my favorite Disney film, but Pinocchio is the peak of what they're able to do. I don't think anything since has come nearly as high in terms of artistic draftsmanship and quality as Pinocchio. Because everything after that, you see that it was so. I mean, the movie cost so much money and it didn't make its money back. It wasn't a success when it came out. So they never did anything as. I mean, like you could look at certain movies like Sleeping Beauty in terms of like, oh my God, that's really ornate and the draftsmanship is great, but it's a completely different
it's a different style. Because of also with the times and everything, you know, like what UPA brought us and
even just budget. And then you look at something like you look at the style of like Bambi, which is so impressionistic, and then you look at something like say Ichabod Mr. Toad, which is probably closer in the style to Pinocchio than Bambi is, but it's not. It's more graphic. It's more taking more liberties.
Pinocchio to me feels like it's a painting, like a Renaissance,
like a Rockwell.
Yeah, like a very. And even with the animated characters, it's like we were talking about it when we were seeing all the characters. Like, think about the airbrush and blush of the face on Jiminy and everything, and all these like different. Like details that they had to come in with, like there's like a dry brush look to
like the edge
a lot
of
of the
Figaro's
edges.
fur, and even on like Geppetto's hair. And another thing too, like you look at Jiminy Cricket. Not only is he like 30 different colors, like he's got green skin, but he also has a little bit of blush on his face to give it a little bit of redness. He's got 3 different colors on his hat. He's got a tuxedo and clothes and shoes with spats that are different colors, and on top of that, the outlines are each painted in different colors. So the line around his hat is a darker blue than the hat is, and someone had to ink in different colors and wait for one thing to dry before they inked it again, then wait until that dries, and then once they were done.
About that hurts.
And then painting it, and then having to paint each color individually, and then having to add the effects on top of it, the dry brush or the airbrushing on top of that.
Yeah. If you're
at 24 frames a second.
If you're an artist and you're an animator and you're doing things digitally and you start complaining about stuff like,
then
I
fuck
gotta
you.
do this. Yeah, but seriously, look at Pinocchio and think how long it must have taken for each frame to go in and have that first off roughed out, then cleaned up, and then they had to paint in outlines and then paint within those, or they even had to brush in like the airbrush look first, and then paint
Layer
over that and layer on top.
And God forbid it didn't jitter onto the camera.
Yeah,
exactly. Redo it.
Right. I mean, if you look closely on it, you can see the jitter, but from just looking at it, it's like it's not even something that you think about. But when you see it, it's just like, wow, that's very well done. How it doesn't look like it grows or is smaller. It's like it's it's perfected.
And it's shot under the camera. And to get certain things under the camera, like
young people these days don't know how good they have it.
I
don't want to be like that.
If you look at a cell,
but it does fascinate me, honestly.
You look at some cells, you're like, why aren't the colors exactly right? To get a color on the screen, you have to paint in a slightly different tint, and it would get taken differently. If you look at cells from Dalmatians, the Dalmatians are painted gray, because if they painted them white, if you put them under the camera lights when they were shooting under the camera, they would fucking glow like radioactive dogs.
Yeah.
So they have to paint in a different color, because under the camera it'll come out differently on the film process. Yeah. And
it's those little things you don't really think about nowadays, because everything is kind of I wouldn't say easily fixed. You know, it's like like you can just go through the chroma key or something and just kind of like go through these things. It's stuff that you kind of had to think about before doing it.
Yeah, it's easy.
Or even through experimentation.
It's even just normally.
And they probably had to do it like several times as well, trying to get it right.
Right, and animating like a character, like here we do it digitally, and we can get instant gratification to see if it looks right. There's a lot of room for trial and error. Then they didn't have that ability to do trial and error. They had a moviola, and they would shoot it and have to develop it on film, wait like 4 or 5 days for it to develop, come back, and then find out, oh shit, that arm doesn't work. I gotta redo it.
Yeah.
And then I was just 2 weeks ago, I was at I drove up to the Walt Disney Family Museum, which is at the Presidio, which is in the north end of San Francisco by the Golden Gate Bridge. And I went up there because they had a Pinocchio exhibit that just ended. It literally ended like 4 days ago. But they were running for a few months. And I got to see some of the original cells, the original drawings, the original background paintings, effects drawings, which are, looking at an effects drawing, your mind would get blown, because you look at this movie and you see the water effects alone. You want
all the water effects in the end are just...
I just want to curl in a fetal position on the ground, just trying to perceive me doing it. And they had original models, like the original maquette models. They had the original concept paintings and storyboard panels, everything. And it was amazing to be able to look at some of the originals up close. I have a friend of mine that works in Disney Archives, and I get to go every once in a while for lunch, and I'll just be able to look at the backgrounds from this movie and be like, oh my god, someone had to sit down here and paint dewdrops on a leaf and make sure it looks all right. And it's going to be under a camera and blown up to be the size of a movie screen. You have to make sure that every detail looks perfect, or there's going to be a noticeable jitter. Because think
of a finished piece that you're trying to either paint or draw digitally, and it takes you about let's say 8 hours, and then you have to do that again, but only slightly different. The next day.
And then on top of that, just thinking about things like, oh god, just
And we don't want to turn this podcast into like things were more difficult back then, but
let's talk about the technicals of animating on 1s and 2s with camera distortion and things like that.
But like this was stuff that we kind of thought about when we were watching it, just like that is really fascinating to think about that they had to do it that way. So, you know, we take that into consideration with this, and we're not going to be like, oh God, because in a scene coming up, which we'll talk about, first off, let's start off this movie. It starts off with the
standard book now, because a lot of people copy this later, was the character being like, well, I didn't believe in the story of this, and but I'll tell you that it was all true, and I'm going to tell you the story, and open a book.
When you think about it, this is the first animated movie.
That's my Jiminy Cricket voice.
Yeah, well, this is like very good.
I'll be doing that throughout the rest of this show.
Yeah. But when you think about it, this is probably the first animated movie. Amin Abed. This is probably the first animated movie that did the "This is me" sort of opening.
Well, I didn't believe in stories and dreams coming true.
In a way.
Yeah,
like,
kind of.
But it starts off with the memorable song of "When You Wish Upon a Star." And we start off with Jiminy Cricket, who's in front of a book, and right beside him is Alice in Wonderland, which is like,
and Peter Pan, because they were like, we're working on it, and then they're like, uh-oh, World War II, I guess we can.
Yeah, exactly. So he opens up the book, and he starts off our story where we go to, it's basically Jiminy Cricket's story.
When you really watch the movie, you really think it's him. It's kind of like how, I'm trying to think of a good example, like of a modern example where you're in a movie, you're in the movie, or in a story, but you're doing it from another character's perspective.
Yeah.
So in this case, it's the story of Pinocchio, because in the original story of Pinocchio, Jiminy Cricket is a character that doesn't even have a name.
Oh yeah.
And
oh God! If we talk about the comparisons to the original book, it's like no.
But like Walt Disney had the vision of being like, I think this character that only appears in the book and gets killed in the book, like in the first few pages, like, you piece of shit, and gets squashed by Pinocchio with a mallet in the book. They like, this character could be like the glue. He is really the glue that holds the whole movie together.
Yeah.
And he tells, it's his story. It's him trying to be a conscious.
Compared to the book, this is a very simplistic, condensed version of the book in where it's just kind of like, because there's millions of characters in the book.
First of all, the book is really just a compilation of, because Collodi, who wrote it, he did it in like the equivalent of like an Italian newspaper. Like it was serialized like a comic strip, but he would tell stories, and it would just go on these weird tangents.
It's a bunch of different stories brought into.
But it's like serialized in almost an LSD like way, where it's just like, then he meets a fox and a cat, then he gets eaten by a dogfish. Then his skin gets.
It's episodic.
It's episodic.
It's episodic when you think about it. But this basically brings the book and kind of just condenses it and brings a couple characters from that book in where it could be a story from like beginning, middle, end,
and just make it more cohesive, because
exactly.
You gotta find. I mean, like even
because if this was like close to, I've seen the movies of Pinocchio where they try to make it as close to the book as possible. And it's fucking insane.
Yeah.
It's like, it's stuff that it's imaginative when you think about it, but as a story, it just goes all over the damn place. It's incomprehensible, honestly.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like, when people have that complaint, I say like, well, there's a reason why, you know?
This isn't like the book. Yeah, well, the book at this point sucks.
Yes. How many Pinocchio purists are out there?
I mean, I know British people who absolutely despise Disney's Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
Because they ruined and same with Alice in Wonderland. I know Alice in Wonderland purists too. But the thing is, I think with Pinocchio, you could give enough leeway where you're like, the original is kind of fucked up. So can we just?
But I'm also in that league of people who are just like, if you want to be a purist about something, don't go towards a movie, honestly, because a movie is trying to tell a story within a certain amount of hours, while probably a book or something has the ability to tell a story within a long period of time. like a TV series could go on for like 12 hours or something like that to tell a story, which is fine. But when you're doing it as a movie, it's like, I know that we can do trilogies and stuff, but we're trying to make one movie right now, and we're trying to tell that story, and we need to really compress a lot of shit into one thing. So here it is, and this is the best job that we could do with it.
I mean, the thing
there's a story in there. There's a beginning, middle, and end somewhere in there. We just have to like kind of pick and choose what we need.
Yeah.
You know?
Like I remember, like here's the difficult thing about doing it. You're adapting anything to the screen, especially a book, is that when you read a book, you're reading words and you're making the image in your mind. The voice of the characters are in your mind. How you visualize the characters in certain sequences or certain things as you read them are in your mind. When you have to do things, and it's very amorphous and ambiguous. It's kind of something that sort of floats in the ether, and you take it and absorb it your own way. You take your time as you read it. You know, it's kind of this sort of nothing you can truly pinpoint exactly.
Yeah.
When you do an adaptation, you have to cement that idea, and not only are you cementing an idea, but you're trying to put it on a screen and you're dictating it to someone.
Yeah.
If you tell someone a story, if you're telling them a story, they can visualize like, oh, this took place in a park, but what does the park look like? Well, it looks like this, and you could picture the trees being here and a water fountain being here and here. When you see a movie, you gotta take all those things and lock it down and like shove it in your face.
Yeah.
It's like, here's Lord of the Rings. Yes, John Rhys Davies is a troll. Here you go.
Yeah.
That one kid from that one movie, yeah, he's the main character now. Remember that other kid from that movie? Remember the really sexy guy that you really have a crush on? Well, he's an elf. You know?
Right.
You probably imagine Treebeard looking like this, but instead he's going to look like this. It's up to artistic interpretation. Mm-hmm. And with Pinocchio, they had to go through a lot of that with even the design of Pinocchio and all these other I mean, I saw a lot of designs for all the other characters in this movie, and I'm glad that they progressed them to be a point where, like, originally Geppetto just looked like a giant version of Doc from Snow White. Like, he was bald and he had the glasses and the little button nose and a beard, and he doesn't.
I kind of need to look back on a lot of the concept art of this movie. I know it's probably somewhere in a book that I have, but
in fact,
but yeah.
One thing, they animated 6 months of this movie, and then Walt saw it and was like, "It's not working. Let's start over." So somewhere in the archives,
and
there's 6 months. There's 6 months of work of animating, like, because they didn't have the design of Geppetto right, of Pinocchio right, and they were like, "Well, we're not sure if he's going to look like this, if he's too appealing."
Yeah.
So they literally animated and then scrapped it all and started over.
Yeah.
And I guess Walt Disney had the money that he was able to be like, "Fuck it." I mean, they spent a lot.
A lot of animated movies do that. But it's like, when you think about back then, it's like, you know, did they really have the money to spend?
Well, they had also had a good series of checks and balances too. And then you get a movie like Monster Trucks, which somehow made it through the production without anyone saying, "Can we just stop for a minute?"
Yeah.
120 million.
Yeah. Well, all right, we're going a little off tangent here now and then, but it's fun to talk about these kind of things, because the idea of, you know, how these movies are made and everything, as along with the story. And but yeah, Jiminy basically talks about himself coming into this home where I guess he's a homeless drifter.
He's a hobo.
Yeah, he's a hobo with a bindle, just like going from house to house trying to find a home where he can live in, and then he finds one where it's like, I went to the house, didn't see anyone there, so I made myself at home.
Because it's the only light on in the whole place. Everyone else is sleeping. And this is a joke that we made throughout the entire movie, was that, like, there's always moments where Geppetto's like, "Let's play music, Pinocchio." And you just imagine the neighbors, like, the old man is making noise again.
He used to see this couple in the house next door. It's like, Frank, he's at it again.
Just town meetings.
We need to do something about this. We need to have a town meeting about this old man and his noisy clock shop. Or is it even a shop?
Yeah,
it's just a home where he makes stuff.
It's a shop.
Yeah, it's a shop. He's the local town clockmaker. But it's most likely like 2 a.m. in the morning, and he's still awake making something, and then he's just turning on all of his clocks and like, it's a celebration! Woo-hoo-hoo! Woo-hoo!
Arrest him. Evict him from his toy shop.
Yeah, the people next door just like banging on the walls, like, oh.
Yeah, but it's late at night. Everyone else is asleep, but he's there, making a puppet.
Yeah.
And, you know.
He's talking to his cat and his fish, like you know, like you normally do.
Like an old man, like, look, I'm lonely. Here's my kitten. Here's my fish.
Yeah.
And
he's entertaining himself. He's basically saying, like, you know, look, I made a little wooden boy. And now I'm gonna like abuse the cat a little bit.
Come on, if you had a puppet, wouldn't you? And if you if I had a marionette and I had
you'd probably be scaring the cat.
I would be like da 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 da. And the cat would be like.
Yeah.
Just me like, look a little wooden deek deek deek. It's like shit.
Yeah.
He's kind of a bastard, Geppetto.
Kind of is, but you know, I mean, he has like a charm to him where he's just like, oh, he's an old
Despite
guy.
the Hitler.
Oh, you want to talk about that? You want to talk about
the guy? The Christian Rube was this German immigrant actor who was the voice of Geppetto in the movie. And he apparently was, from what I've heard, was really not like super like devoutly, but he was like, I like this Hitler fella.
He's kind of like, you know,
Have you heard about this Hitler fella? He seems to be doing good things for Germany.
He's like the Trump supporter before the election.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, he has some good things to say.
He is.
He's speaking his mind, you know? Yeah. It's more like that.
When they recorded the dialogue, it was probably like right before Poland was invaded, so before people were like, ooh, but even then, people were like, but you should really look up on Hitler, you know? He seems like a very good guy.
Yeah. There was quite a few people like that.
Yeah,
before,
but
sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, people did that in the 30s and 40s, or in the early 30s, the mid to late 30s.
Yeah. It wasn't much of a thought until like suddenly it happened.
And
then
oops.
It's like this is bad.
But he was like telling the animators and the people who were recording, like, "Oh, Hitler, you should really look into him. He seems like a really good guy." And everyone would be like, "Oh God, don't. Can we just record your lines? You got to sing Little Wooden Head, take it from the top. You know, Hitler, really. When you really think about it, you know, like, I could just imagine that Geppetto voice, like, I know just what to name you. You know, I read Hitler's newest book, and it's really interesting.
Do we have to call him Pinocchio? How about Adolf? Adolf sounds like
a cute little boy's
good name. A good name for a child.
Now we're just going a little too far. We're just putting words in a dead man's mouth.
I know. But I'm very certain, like, whatever the guy thought or anything, I don't know. I can't say. So, but yeah, it's.
I mean, he wasn't.
Funny.
I mean, it's not like he was a Nazi sympathizer.
No.
Yeah,
I'm very certain he was.
So anyway,
it's just one of those things.
We always got to bring Hitler into these podcasts. Hitler.
Well, it is based in Germany, this movie, right?
Well, it's kind of a weird mixture of like Germany, Italy, Sweden.
Yeah,
there's a Swiss look to it.
It's Europe. That's basically what it is.
It's that colonial.
It's the fine town of Europe.
Let's see. Yeah, it's the beautiful. Look at there's an Italian quality, but there's also like, because it's an Italian story written in Italy.
It is,
but it takes place in kind of like Pinocchio's wearing lederhosen. Mm-hmm. There's
Geppetto has a German accent.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It's like going to Disneyland.
There's a British guy in it.
There's a British guy. There's I guess an Italian?
Spanish,
whatever.
Italian. He's Italian.
Stromboli's Italian, but then you get like a little bit of everybody. You get a nice mixture. Get a nice kid from the Bronx in there.
Yeah.
You get whatever the hell Cliff Edwards, who was Jiminy Cricket, who was a famous vaudeville and radio star. He would sing. He was the first guy who ever sang the song "Singing in the Rain."
Yeah.
And he was. I mean, there's a long story about his life, but that's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
He. That's the one thing about Disney movies too, is that like people have said like voicing a Disney character makes them immortal. Yeah. Like Phil Harris said, like, this Baloo has made me immortal. I know that I'm going to be long gone, but people are going to remember me as being this character. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
It's true.
So, like, Cliff Edwards, despite his many problems, he was actually probably be fondly remembered for playing this cute little cricket character. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyway, so they're in the house, and Geppetto is a little interacting with his cat and his fish.
And to be honest, this intro is very, it's really long. I mean, in comparison to the entire movie.
It's like 20 minutes of...
It is. It's a very, it's not exposition. It's just kind of...
Setting this
just tone. Kind of setting this, like, very, home... like very homey setting. You know, it's just like it's like an old guy who just lives with his cat and his goldfish, talks to them, and makes things. And he's alone. He doesn't have any other family or
but it
that
really
we know
establishes
of.
the personalities of those characters.
Yeah,
like especially Jiminy Cricket, but just by having him in the house and making little comments, because he's very. The movie is in this timeless, magical, way back when time. But Jiminy Cricket himself, the character, exists in, like, if you try to go back to 1940, he is a 1940 person viewing this classic.
Yeah, he's almost the audience, you know?
He is the Eddie Murphy in Shrek of Pinocchio in a weird way.
I suppose, yeah. Well, they're when you think about a lot of animated movies, it's like they have like a time setting, but then there's also that element of contemporary spin on it, where it's just like the character that's kind of like on the outside looking in, but he's also a part of it.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of neat, because then you have that connection that you can give.
Yeah.
To the movie, at least in animated movies anyway.
I mean, I just love that, like when you really think about it, like just in depth, you think of like Lion King. It takes place in Africa, and you have like, of course, you have like a British, like one or two British characters. Then you have like a Jewish meerkat. And you're like, where does this guy fit in?
Yeah.
But it's like in this movie.
Yeah. Well, what time did Lion King exist? Like in the 1700s, or like?
Well, it's kind of
5,000 BC.
Yeah, and like, but in the case of Pinocchio, which kind of set the tone for most Disney movies after that in terms of sidekick characters and songs. Jiminy Cricket's the first real sidekick Disney character in a Disney movie, and he kind of sets the bar really high for any character that came after that.
Right.
Because he's supposed to be the conscious, but he's sort of the driving force that keeps the movie going.
Yeah.
Because Pinocchio is,
and that's why I feel like it's more about Jiminy Cricket than it is about Pinocchio, because, at least in the beginning of it, because when he comes in, well, Geppetto basically sees a wishing star outside, or like the brightest star outside, and he says like, a wishing star, you know what I wish? I wish that Pinocchio would be a real boy. And then he goes to sleep, and then Jiminy is just kind of like, oh, that's a nice idea, but whatever. And then all of a sudden,
the fairy
comes out, and he's suddenly like, I'm a believer. All right, I believe it now. I believe it.
When you watch this movie again, you realize how much of a womanizer Jiminy Cricket is.
Oh, God, yes.
You think of him, every time you see him at Disney, he's always like, well, you've got to be good, and remember to look both ways before crossing
Remember
the street.
Temptation? The stay away from temptation.
And he's like always like,
oh, hey, a dame.
Yeah, pretty much. As I live and breathe, the fairy just looks at the camera and goes, And you're like, Jiminy, like there's a scene.
Jiminy.
There's like a puppet show with like French can-can
Call off
girls.
your dogs.
He's a scene with French can-can dancing puppets later on in the movie, and he's looking smiling. And then he just takes out eyeglasses and is like ogling at it, like woo woo.
Yeah, wow. He does that quite a few times.
He dances with a wooden music box. How about we sit out the next one, babe? Huh? Like, it's like you're a horny little bug, aren't you?
He's a lonely bug. He hasn't had any cricket poon for a while.
I didn't expect you to say that. And I kind of secretly hoped you didn't. I wish I could go back in time and take that away.
Cricket poon.
But it's weird. You look at Jiminy Cricket as this heartwarming, lovable, like pure character.
But that's the thing. It's like with these lovable characters, they also have like there's a human element to it almost. When you think about Bugs Bunny, it's like Bugs Bunny is like a very straightforward character where you see him as a good guy. But then when you really think about it, he's vengeful. He's very
justifiably vengeful.
He has like all these like little quirks to him where he's like he can cross dress. He can just he always like spits on people's faces when they're down, and he's very conniving as well. But he's a good guy. Yeah. So it's like when you think about Jiminy Cricket, it's like he's a good guy, and he also he wants a little on the side.
I'm going to be honest with you, Pinocchio. I have urges. I can't just be walking around, making sure you don't kill yourself out in the woods. I'm looking over there and I'm like, either someone's shoplifting cantaloupe or a genie just granted my wish. I'm just like at the corner of his eye, just like I don't know. But
Yeah.
either way, but Jiminy Cricket, and then like this beautiful, well animated Blue Fairy because it's rotoscoped.
It's rotoscoped, but it's rotoscoped in a way where it doesn't feel like it is rotoscoped.
It's very beautifully done,
But-
especially compared to like even Snow White. And then you look at after that, they did what was it, Fleischer did Gulliver's Travels, and those characters look like crap.
Oh yeah, those.
Oh my god.
Yeah, those feel like if you rotoscoped film of a person that is of very low quality, where it's like, oh, the pixels go everywhere, but you're trying to
rotoscope over
trying to
camcorder.
figure out where that. Yeah, exactly.
A 480.
So it looks very mushy a lot of the times.
A 480 resolution video.
But I feel like comparatively to all the other Disney characters in history, the Blue Fairy is the least stylized character in Disney history, I feel. Because she looks so realistic and plain and very... I mean, she's a beautiful fairy, but it's like that's what it... Yeah, But I mean, that's just it. She's a beautiful woman wearing a dress and fairy wings in the back. It's like it's the easiest Halloween costume you can ever think of.
Imagine having to consistently like draw that though.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
No, I don't think anyone besides maybe I don't know Richard Williams has the patience to animate a character that detailed, and it comes off so well. There's never a moment where you're looking at
actually I think the closest character that I can think of that is as not as stylized as all other characters is Cinderella. Because Cinderella is very.
But Cinderella
human-y.
also at times has no nose.
Yes.
just like you have to kind of cheat that because if you add too much detail onto a face, they make them look older.
Yeah.
But unless you really stylize, like they did with Meg or with some of the other later stylized Disney heroine characters.
Right.
And
but still, it's like it's very well done how they how they made it rotoscope, but they still kept it this character.
It's consistent.
And yeah, very consistent. So and with all this special effects,
like
you were talking about the backgrounds when she's moving down toward the house, where it's like there's layers upon layers of the same background, but they had to like change it slightly because it was moving with the light.
Yeah, so
of
like
the fairy.
if you watch an old movie and you see a character walking through and like the lighting is changing in a room, there's no like, oh, let me put a filter over that. Like now you can go into the computer and just literally take the same background and change the colors in the computer digitally.
Yeah.
But in this movie, that's my slides. In this movie, you literally have to repaint the background with different colors to change the lighting. And you have to cross dissolve in the camera.
And it also doesn't really look like there's any change whatsoever it's painstakingly well.
And the fact that they made this movie in such a short amount of time. They made this movie in like 2.5 years, man. 2.5 years.
And didn't you say that, wait, you told me Fantasia was like, what, 6 months afterwards?
No, they came out like the productions were overlapped.
Oh, okay.
Like, but people were on Pinocchio and then they went on to Fantasia to animate something, then they would go back onto Pinocchio.
Right.
Like people were jumping back and forth on both movies, depending on what they needed.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
Like,
so it was different crews,
yeah,
right?
It was. There were different crews, different directors, but then there was some overlap. Like
I see.
While you're animating, like
still, that's like a lot to do.
Yeah. Like the guy who animated Stromboli, Vladimir Tyler, animated all of Stromboli in the movie. He doesn't have a lot of screen time.
No, he
in
doesn't.
The movie, but he also animated a lot of. He animated the Sorcerer in Fantasia. He animated the Demon on Bald Mountain, like all of the Demon on Bald Mountain.
Yeah.
So it's like. And Ward Kimball was doing Jiminy Cricket, but he was also doing a lot of the Bacchus in the past.
Yeah, and Monstro and the dinosaurs.
There's people who were specifically like the guy who animated Cleo. He did almost all of Cleo, the goldfish in the movie. He did all the fish in Nutcracker.
Yeah.
And they look like Cleo.
I mean, yeah. When you look at it,
but the productions are tiered in this. But they came out like February of 1940 was Pinocchio, and then in the fall in November, like 8 months later, is Fantasia. Like Jesus Christ, like or Jiminy Crickets, I should say, because Jiminy Cricket is just a euphemism for Jesus Christ. So
yeah,
Jiminy Cricket.
Well, there you go, conscience.
Yeah, conscience.
Doing
Temptation.
Temptation.
The Last Temptations of Jiminy Cricket. But so anyway, the Blue Fairy comes and grants Pinocchio life, and he's alive, and he's this little naive.
But he's
little boy.
still made of wood, and she basically says,
Still made of wood, but he still has fleshy cheeks.
In order to be a real boy, you have to know right from wrong. And,
brave, truthful, and unselfish.
Brave, truthful, and unselfish. And then, well, how will I know? It's like, well, your conscience will tell you. It's like, what's a conscience?
I'll tell you.
And Jiminy is just basically, what's a conscience? You know what? And now all of a sudden he becomes political. You know, it's like he comes out like,
trouble with the world.
You know what? That's the trouble with the world today. People don't know right from wrong. It's like, are you my conscience? Like me? It's like
the guy who looks at women and goes.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like, yeah, he gets roped into it because the Blue Fairy comes out and is like, would you like to be Pinocchio's conscience? And this kind of like shows off her cleavage to him a little bit, and he's just like, okay, I'll do it.
Oh crap! Now I'm stuck with a little boy for the next. Oh.
Yeah, because he's just like, oh, I almost forgot about you. When the Blue Fairy leaves, like,
literally 10
he was about ready to leave, and he was just like, oh wait, shit, I got a job now.
She gives him like, oh, a hobo, a hobo can't be a conscience, so dresses him up in a really nice suit.
Yeah.
And
a hobo can't be a conscience.
Yeah, so
I'm gonna tell you about the world and make some beans.
Sit down here, we're gonna talk about the hobo's creed.
That would have been interesting, yeah.
The hobo creed.
His bindle disappears from the rest of the movie.
Hey, where'd you do all my clothes? I had some valuables out of a tin can. And
gotta go, bye!
Oh, my bindle. But so, then he teaches him how to, because he's like, if you ever need me, Pinocchio, just whistle. And it's,
it becomes that song, like Give a Little Whistle, which is a cute song.
The key thing about Disney songs is that they're supposed to be used in lieu of exposition.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works. In this movie, I like the song works, but it's really just the I'm Your Conscience song.
Yeah, the entire time I was just joking about the fact, like, wow, Geppetto's a heavy sleeper.
They're whistling, there's people clattering, there's dancing, there's him making...
Meanwhile, the people next door are just like, dear God, what is wrong with this old man? I thought he was going to sleep.
Then he shoots off a gun later, and you're like, shit, there's some shit going down at the Geppetto residence today.
It's like, that's it, I'm calling the police.
I say, move it along, what's going on here? Well, my boy came to life, and you're coming with me.
He's like, oh, wooden boy came to life, huh? Well, why don't you just come down to the station and talk to us about it?
Somehow in this Swiss town, there's an Irish cop.
Well, as we said, this is the town of Europe.
Sweet little town of Europe, any town.
Any town, Europe.
Any town, USA, Europe. And so Pinocchio makes a bunch of noise, and Geppetto wakes up. And this is one of my favorite bits where it's like, who's there? It's me. Oh, it's me.
Yeah. So there's some good, like... There's some good jokes. And then, before, I think what was great about when all the clocks go off and they start going off and like telling time, it's like it's you get all these great shots of the clocks, and like they're all really neat little things like there's a bee that comes out of one, there's a drunk that comes out of like a bar.
Well, my favorite is just knowing that Geppetto sat there. It's like, you know what, my next clock will be a mother spanking her child. It's like, she gets his hand in some jam.
But that entire thing is a setup to the joke, I wonder what time it is. And he takes out his watch and looks at it.
There's little jokes that are like non-jokes.
Yeah.
Like I remember watching Fantasia, and there's a scene where Mickey's on the book, and he's reading the book trying to get the spell to stop the water, and at one point he licks his finger to turn the page.
Yeah.
There's water everywhere. You don't need to lick your finger.
Yeah,
but it's like a non-joke.
Great little subtle stuff like that, which is great. But yeah, I mean, he basically finds that Pinocchio is alive, and he's like, "No, you can't be alive. I'm asleep. I'm dreaming."
Pours water on him, dries almost instantaneously.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Oh yay! I have a real boy now. Let's call for a celebration." And again, the people next door
blinds shut. Yeah, the neighbors are probably just like, "Oh my God, those damn clocks." Him singing, it's like, oh man, someone go in there and find out he has a drinking problem, because he's been up all night, all week, just painting and singing and talking to his cats. Lights are on, keeping us awake.
Yeah. But yeah, it's all this set up basically. Is like Geppetto is really happy that he has Pinocchio as a real boy now, and basically it doesn't question it, but it's like, yeah, now I'm finally a father, and like and you know, they go to sleep, and it's like, okay, tomorrow.
Oh, don't forget, there's that moment I showed you.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
I spoke about it recently. Lately on Twitter, I've been posting clips from cartoons about just showing animation principles and how there's things about how certain either animation cheats will disguise flaws or mistakes or errors. Mm-hmm. And there's sometimes where
happens to a lot of movies, honestly.
And just by studying this movie, like I study all these. I'm a nerd. I study these movies frame by frame.
Yeah.
And there's something I noticed, and if you watch the movie again, you're never going to be able to unsee it. I apologize, but there's a scene where Pinocchio is testing out, and he's
playing with a candle,
and he gets his finger caught on fire.
Yeah.
And Geppetto's running around trying to say water, get the gotta get the fire. He's panicking,
and then there's cuts.
And there's cuts. But you're so. You don't notice it because the scene there's so much high energy and you're panicking. People are panicking.
And there's also focus on something else, like his finger's on fire, so he's holding it out, you know.
Yeah.
So,
but if the shots it's just a continuity error. Geppetto is wearing a nightcap, and then certain shots he'll wear a nightcap, and then there'll be his hat is off, and then he does have a hat, and then he doesn't have a hat for 2 shots, and then it's back.
Yeah, I was like, hey, look, nightcap, no nightcap, nightcap. No nightcap.
Yeah, and it's just you go through it.
Nightcap,
like,
no nightcap.
There, it's gone.
I was just thinking, like, and I'm pretty sure it happened at some point in the theater as the animators were watching this, and it's probably the world premiere of this, and they're looking at it, and then one of them just like notices like,
no. But even though other people notice it, or it doesn't,
but everyone else doesn't notice it.
I love that scene, and you're like, oh yeah,
oh good.
Walt, don't be mad.
Yeah, he was waiting for like the lashings from Walt Disney the next day. So
what's this I hear about the nightcap? Oh, don't remind me, man.
Yeah, but that's a fun little like tidbit to like look at and
but
point out.
But you're still taken up by the energy of the scene.
Yeah.
They don't notice that.
Yeah, that happens.
Like I never noticed it as a kid, and then I remember freeze frame and being like, "Wait a minute, wasn't he wearing a hat?" Mm-hmm. What's that two things? Wait a minute.
Wait a minute. No, this is all wrong.
Wait a minute. But
doesn't add up.
Well, who knows? Those scenes might have been taken out. I mean, it's had them taken out of order. There might have been a different order to it.
Maybe.
Either way. So they go to sleep. It's like, oh, I have a son.
Maybe he never had a hat to begin with, and we're all like dreaming of this.
Like the Berenstain Bears.
Yeah.
There wasn't a show called Kazam. There wasn't, but I should know. No, there never was. But it's funny. I just love I have a son. I'm a father. Time for bed. And then they go to bed.
Yeah, because it must be like 4 a.m. now.
Yeah, it's like, now you got to go to school in the morning.
Yeah.
Why? I love how like realistic, like there's certain little actions that Pinocchio will do. Like if he's nervous, he'll roll his finger in his pants.
Yeah, and that's really noticeable, especially when he's like on stage for the Stromboli thing, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But yeah, the next morning he's basically getting ready for school. You were talking about this one shot before that.
There's a shot that's like a multiplane shot. It was an expensive shot. It cost like the equivalent of like a couple $100,000 in today's money. But it's a scene where you start from the bell tower and you pan through the town to up till Geppetto's house, and it's like a
kind of like the Heart of Darkness scene in the beginning.
But it's like 30, and it's like it's not like you could take a camera and go through a scene. You have to literally paint stuff, and there's layers, and there's animation, and there's birds flying, and there's stuff going on, and like it's an expensive shot, and like apparently during the premiere, no one like noticed it. It's like because it looks so good that no one really notices it.
Right. But then it's one of those things that's just kind of natural, you know.
And then there's a scene later with like just a boat on a river on the ocean with distortion glass, and people are going ooh ah, and Walt's just like, God damn it! I spent all this money, and it just means nothing.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you're in the process of making it. And you realize how much effort and time goes into it. But as an audience member, you look at that and just see it as something that you're looking at. You don't really think about the energy and time that went behind it. You're just seeing it's like, oh, this is a scene that's happening.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, I can understand that sort of like tension about
the art of it's the
Yeah.
art of spending extra time on something that the audience would just not notice.
Yeah.
Like there's that term in
It's like, why?
there's a film term that originated with Roger Rabbit called bumping the light, which is there's a scene in Roger Rabbit where Eddie Valiant keeps bumping the light in that back part of the saloon, and the light keeps swinging.
Yep.
So the lighting is changing. So when the people who had to do the shadow and highlight work on Roger Rabbit, on himself in that scene,
They had to follow
animate,
that light.
and every time he keeps bumping that light, they didn't need to do that.
No.
But they did it because it added
realism.
It added realism. It grounded that character in that world. They didn't need to do that crazy ass scene. They could just have a basic pan through a town with no multiplane, no stuff happening, no going through.
It is
archways.
impressive.
It's
It is
impressive.
impressive, but it's like at the same time, it's like as an audience member, you don't think about that. You don't. As a filmmaker, you might think about.
It's
that.
immersive.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like it's just like, oh, this is a scene that is happening.
Yeah. Oh look, a town. Oh look, people are getting up and going.
But
to
yeah,
school.
but it is a very beautiful pan,
Yeah.
and seeing like the different angles and stuff that go to it, and also the fact that it was done at the time it was being done is also really impressive because it's like
Also,
we could have done this on a computer.
Also, if something is wrong, if you make one wrong measurement in the pan,
God.
there's no going back and like, let me just cut that frame out and redo it.
Yeah.
You just have to start over.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god. The cameramen were geniuses on those movies.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so Geppetto's like, I've known you for 4 hours, but I'm going to send you to school.
On your own, by yourself, off to school. Go ahead.
Goodbye.
And now I'm alone again.
Yeah, he goes back in the house and he's dancing like da 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 da. Oh,
now I have the satisfaction of knowing that I have a son and I can be alone at home.
And then we're introduced to the fox and the cat, which I know people
Honest
who are like,
John.
I've known people who are like, this takes me out of the movie. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, there's a giant fox and a cat walking around. And I'm like, there's a talking cricket. Like, just, can you...
Wait a minute, the cricket wasn't enough?
The little Elmer Fudd man with a triangle nose, it wasn't enough to sell you on the idea?
Yeah.
And he's only a cricket because you call him a cricket. He doesn't really look like
No,
a cricket.
they call him or Lampitt calls him a beetle, and that's what I always thought.
Oh, it's the
like-
beetle.
that's what I always thought he was. He was more of a beetle than he was.
So we introduce this fox and the cat, and the fox is voiced by a character actor. I forget his name, Walter Catlin or something. I forget the name. And the cat, the fox is voiced by Walter Catlin. The cat is voiced by Mel Blanc.
Was.
He was originally a character that spoke, and then they made him mute because they said he doesn't need to talk.
Yeah, he doesn't need to talk. He's
in
basically
the movie
the Harpo.
It's some hiccups, like he's a Harpo Marx kind of a character, and he just goes, and that's it.
That's
and
it.
It's the only Disney character ever played in his entire life. He played a hiccup in a Disney movie.
I would have loved to have heard like what he was probably tried to
what the
sound
voice he was going to do. He was probably going to do like a thanks, Louie.
I look at my birth certificate.
It says I'm full. Give me back my candle. Oh, look, a wooden boy. So they're walking through, and you're introduced to these con artist rapscallion.
Yeah, they're con artists.
Yeah.
They basically it's like, well, the children are laughing, going to school. What a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, Stromboli's in town.
They look at a poster. Look, Stromboli, remember when I passed you off as a puppet? You know, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's fun because you have a little back and forth, and you know exactly. Just in the few seconds you see these characters, you know, this guy is dumb.
Yeah.
The dumb lackey.
And it's funny. It's like they pass by. It's like, a little wooden boy. A wooden boy. And then I was immediately joking. It's like, a talking fox.
Like you were thinking like, imagine like there's that scene where he brings, because you never see see the scene where he gives Pinocchio to
basically the Honest John and the cat, like whose name is Kitty, right?
Gideon.
I always thought his name was Kitty.
He says Giddy.
Oh, he says Giddy, right?
Yeah.
I always thought it was
Remember
Kitty, but it is Gideon. Okay, so Gideon and Honest John basically trick him into becoming, like, don't you want to become an actor? Yeah, let's forget school. Let's
Fame.
Go. Fame, fortune. Hi, diddly-dee, an actor's life for me. And they go off, and then, Jiminy is like...
Tries to stop them
because it's like, first day on the job, and I'm already late. But it was funny because, like, I thought about this interaction between Stromboli and Honest John, where it's just like, Stromboli, I've got this wonderful act for you. Look, a wooden boy. And then Stromboli goes like, a talking fox, and he just takes him and like puts him on the
Just goes, he just pulls him into the wagon. And
yeah,
ties him up.
yeah. I just thought that would be funny. It's just like that. That's another interaction where I was like,
it is a talking fox.
yeah.
Oh my god! But another thing too is that there's a scene where because Jiminy tries to tell Pinocchio like, listen, tell him that you gotta go to school and don't go. And he's, bye, Jiminy, and he leaves. And at one point, Jimmy's like, what do? I know. I'll tell his father. Wait, that'll be snitching.
Yeah.
And it's like it's the only reason we're continuing with this story. Is just he's just like, I don't want to tell.
Yeah.
Just one line, just throw it away. That'll be snitching. It's like you're
What,
conscious.
a stool pigeon? Nah,
Yeah.
I ain't no lackey.
Oh, I saw him do it. I saw it with my very own eyes. So there. So then you introduce the Stromboli, who's this very animated.
Oh
lack
god,
of a better word,
I love the animation of Stromboli.
He's the guy who animated him was good at doing like putting raw emotion and power.
Mm-hmm.
He knows how to get this very. And I come from an Italian family, Sicilian relative.
Oh god, he's
So
immediately. This is the most Italian man I've ever seen.
He's very powerful. And he and yeah, I love that.
I love those little like isms where it's like, and this he will talk and sing without the use of strings.
I hope.
Yeah.
And it's just this fun little character. And then we introduced to the I Got No Strings on Me, and Jimmy's watching from above, just like, what up? Go ahead, you little waste of space. Be an actor, why don't you? You make a fool of yourself. And so he's doing this Got No Strings on Me, which is such a fun little sequence with these puppets and Pinocchio, great animation. And then
we were questioning. Wait a minute, who are Stromboli's other actors? Like
he's got a band. He's conducting a band.
He's not doing it. He's like in the front conducting the band.
He's got 2 wagons. How many people is stuffed in that other wagon? Are they like? Does he pick them up at Home Depot? Like, you're going to perform in my show.
They're all in cages in there. It's like, dear God, how do we get roped into this?
Well, at least I'm living my.
Oh right, that ad.
Yeah. But so he's got like puppeteers and all this stuff, and you never see them. And then they do the show, and then he's a success, and Jiminy Cricket's like, "What does an actor want with a conscience anyway?"
Which is a great stab.
It's a great line. Yeah, they constantly say that. It's like, I don't want to be I'd rather be smart than be an actor. Attaboy, Pinocchio.
Yeah.
And then both characters look at the camera and just go, zing!
Take that, Hollywood.
Take that, you bastard. Take that, Cary Grant.
Take that for not giving me an Oscar.
You asshole. Maybe that's why they were like, well, back then they made a joke about actors not having consciousness and being stupid. So, Beauty and the Beast, nominated for Best Picture. We'll give it to another movie. Okay. But anyway, so Stromboli has this great little moment with Pinocchio where he's like, "I will push you into the public's eye, your face," and he's got like,
which is
bites
great.
into an onion.
He bit into an onion and he just like had like Pinocchio right in his face, and then you see Pinocchio's like his eyes are tearing, which I always thought was funny.
So and then he throws Pinocchio into a cage. And locks him up, and he's
because Pinocchio says like, I'm gonna go tell my father right now. Oh, your father! That's a good joke.
Before I knock you silly. And then he leaves and rides and there's a shot where it's like, oh my god, to animate the cage, the front and the back of the cage, and Pinocchio running around inside of it.
I'm very certain that they had to have like a guide
it's
or
probably
something.
a model, but you still have to draw it and then animate Pinocchio inside of it.
Well, you were also telling me that the wagon was a model. Which,
they just filmed the model and put it on.
It looked good. It looked really, really good. Yeah. And you said you saw it somewhere.
Yeah, I saw it in the archives.
Was it there?
Yeah, they have the wagon there. Yeah, it's really cool. And so, Jiminy, and Geppetto is like, "Where is my son? I brought him out into the world, and he has."
Yeah, this is like the first night. He doesn't realize like he should have been back by now. And he has dinner prepared.
And there's 2 things that both I love and are bothered by this scene. One, that fish that Figaro's gonna eat looks so. Someone had to animate melting butter, and it's the best looking butter I've ever seen. Better than real butter.
All the animated food in this looks really good.
And then there's like a chocolate
the
cake.
apple that Honest John starts biting into. It's like, I kind of want that apple.
Animated food. I set up a Tumblr of just animated food, and it like just sort of died. No one cared, but it was still like you look at cartoon food, and it always looks so good. There's a scene where they're eating turkey and eating pies and ice cream later in the movie, and it looks so good. And there's also a scene with. And the thing that's bothered me is just like in Cleo's bowl, there's a string and there's a piece of chocolate cake. That is the soggiest ass cake. That is awful. It's so beautiful, but
here you go, Cleo.
And then the chocolate just dissolves off and just floods it with chocolate, and it's like I just killed Cleo. Oh no!
The fish floating in chocolate mist.
Oh, Cleo, I'm so sorry.
Oh, Cleo, I'm so sorry. I gave you dessert before the main course.
Oh no, Cleo, you got boobs in the bowl. I cleaned fish after dinner. After I find Pinocchio.
Yeah, probably never came back that night. He's just like,
Yeah, but he goes looking and they cross paths and he never sees Pinocchio. And even that's a great little moment.
Starts raining.
He yells for Pinocchio, and then right as he's yelling his name,
lightning strikes
and kills him. Lightning strikes and kills Geppetto.
Oh.
But and then you have this great moment where Jiminy tries to get him out. He can't.
He's like, maybe I should just wish him goodbye, because I guess he's a good actor. With dignity.
And so then he goes in and tries to get Pinocchio out of the cage and can't. And he's like, yeah, it's pretty hopeless. You're stuck here. Goodbye. No. And then he stays, and then the fairy comes back. Deus Ex Machina. And then we have the whole sting of every time he lies, his nose grows.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, throwaway thing. It's like, don't lie, and I'll make your nose go back to normal. And she frees him.
And then she frees him, leaves, and then Pinocchio goes, bye, sucker. It's like,
bye, asshole. Shh, no, stop it. And then,
well, he's immediately like, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to tell my dad that everything's going to be okay, and I'm going to be a good boy, and I'm going to be I'm going to go to school. And then there was a scene.
Cut to a Red Lobster where, in the dingy part of town, there's a Red Lobster. The Red Lobster Inn.
Yes, it's literally Red Lobster.
You were dying when I yelled it. It's like, because you just see a foggy town. You're like, in the dark recesses of this town, by the shore, flies a Red Lobster.
And then inside there's Honest John and Gideon's like, you gotta try the cheddar baked biscuits. It's great.
How would you blokes like to have some of my fish and chips? Well, who do we have to...
Yeah.
No, nothing like that.
No. I'm looking for stupid little boys.
Stupid little boys. The ones that play hooky from school. Oh.
Meanwhile, across from them on the other table is Gaston and LeFou talking to the old guy that is...
You gotta get crazy old Maurice. Hold on. Will you guys keep it down about stupid little boys and let us talk about it? How would you blokes like to make it? You ain't shut up about a beast over there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's basically this... they're talking back and forth about this whole plan that this coachman has. And this is his name, Coachman.
I want to abduct little boys for my magical amusement park.
Quotation marks.
Right. And of course he's got like a Cockney accent.
Yeah.
So he sounds like...
Well, you said he was voiced by the same guy.
Guy did Strumble.
Yeah. So
good.
He has good range.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were two different people.
Like to kill some boys, steal them away, and bring them to my and he's got like these boogeymen, like these people in black hoods.
Yeah, what I kind of describe him as the gorilla phantom blot, because they even have like the fur on their arms, on their
these
arms.
Creepy men.
Yeah. They're constantly in the shadow.
Creepy men stealing little boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, this movie is very...
Yeah, it got really dark.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's already dark to begin with.
Yes. Yeah.
Either way, so he does that boy shot and scares the shit out of everybody.
Yeah, that's the shot that you said that you scared you of.
And then there's a great scene where the fox and the cat, I guess obviously they spent all night just taking boys. And so they find Pinocchio.
And it's in the middle of the night, too.
What boys are around?
What boys? Like maybe they're in the back alley or something playing hooky or something. Oh, little boys.
Does this rag smell like chloroform?
I think They just like snuck into houses and like started taking like children from.
How the cat stole children.
Yeah.
Stupid little boys.
Yeah. But yeah, Pinocchio is like running down the alley. He's gonna go home, but he's immediately stopped by Honest John, who tricks him into thinking like, "You
I'm allergic.
are sick. You're a sick individual. Look at you." No, yeah. There's this whole routine where it's like he tries to play off like where Pinocchio's sick, and it's like, what you need is a
vacation to Pleasure Island.
To Pleasure Island. Here's my card, and it's a ace of spades.
Yeah.
And he just like gives it to him, and he's like, at this point, Pinocchio hasn't really like decided to go with them. He's constantly saying like, no, I gotta go home, and then he's abducted. He is picked up by his arms and is abducted.
Pinocchio didn't really make this choice.
No, he didn't make this choice.
He was just straight up kidnapped by a giant fox and a cat.
Yeah, and then again, Jiminy is just like, what the fuck did this guy? Where did he go?
Oh, for fuck's sake, Pinocchio!
I can't buy eyes off you for a minute.
I hate this job.
But yeah, we see this coach, which is filled with boys and going like crazy. Going crazy. I saw your face.
And then I saw her face. Stupid little boys. Not a trace. And then you meet Lampwick, who's a smart alecky little bastard kid.
Yeah.
He's kind of from the Bronx. He kind of like, I'm gonna go to Pleasure Island.
Hey,
Philly. No, Fievel. That name's gotta go. Pinocchio.
That name's gotta go. How about Pinocchio?
He calls him Slats.
What?
He calls him Slats. Like, hey, Slats.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Because he's wooden slats. He's made out of wooden slats. Hey, Slats.
That's a bit of a stretch, but all right.
It works.
Yeah, whatever.
Better than, it's like Tramp calling Lady Pigeon, and he keeps calling her Pidge. So it's like,
Pidge.
she's calling her a bitch? Well, she technically is a bitch.
Well, technically, but also it's kind of worse where it's like,
bitch,
it's like,
what were you, bitch?
But
bitch,
well,
bitch, and you're like, I remember as a kid being like, stop saying that word.
Well, it has like worse implications because it's like, oh, what a pigeon, it's like that's like a trying to get like someone who's very naive and everything.
Yeah, but it's also
like
like
he's calling her a pigeon.
Oh, my little pigeon.
Yeah,
come here, kissy,
but
the pussycats. Where are we going? We're talking about Pinocchio. It's like, why are we suddenly talking about
we went into like nicknames that characters give each other.
So anyway, Lampwick and they all go to Pleasure Island, which is this giant theme park.
Yeah.
That has like the roughhouse, come in and smoke cigars,
and
beat the shit out of each other.
Basically everything that a stupid little boy can
Stupid little boys. Stop whispering, stupid little boys. You were laughing every time you go, stupid little boys.
It's great.
That's
a great line, though. But yeah,
that's how I'm gonna get you to laugh. I just like whenever you're talking, I'll just go, stupid little boys, and that'll stop you in your tracks.
Stupid little boys. But yes, there's like. They give the kids cigars. They give the kids beer. Basically everything. There's like da 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 da. Puff and puff and puff.
Little boys should not be smoking cigarettes. And so they're doing all this stuff. They're destroying a model home. Mm-hmm. They're taking cigars from giant cigar store Indians.
Which is.
They're beating the shit out of each other.
The house, like the model house that you can break. That's a legitimate stress reliever thing that you can do. It's just like. Just pay $20 and you can ruin.
Where's the coachman getting the money to steal? I mean, I guess he's selling them to salt mine. Because that's what he's doing. He's turning all these kids into donkeys.
There's a big market on donkeys.
There's plenty of salt mines here in Europe, and circuses and guided tours of the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, there's mountains. Yeah, like all these gorilla people are just like outside. There's got to be an easier way to make
monkeys,
not monkeys, like donkeys. Like monkeys aren't donkeys.
Donkey Kong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's stripping kids of their clothes once they're donkeys and finding out. Oh, you still talk. Put them back. You can still talk. I guess apparently, they must have laced the beer with something to
magic.
Make them.
Yeah. It's
evil magic. Dark magic. Yeah.
And, they borrowed potion from Yzma from Emperor's New Groove.
Dr. Facilier's Underground. All right, coachman, you have a name? No. All right, whatever. Well, we need you to use this potion to turn boys into donkeys. Well, what do you need it for? Well, we need them for salt mines and things like that. Right. Super.
Anyway, yeah, no, it basically, it's honestly more metaphorical than it is logical.
Yeah, but this is,
and they say like, it's like, oh, let them make jackasses of themselves.
And as a kid, hearing the word jackass, you're like, oh, and it's like, well, that's a horrible word. And then Jiminy Cricket.
I remember watching this movie, and I turned to my mom, and it's like, is that a bad word? She's like, no, it's an animal.
Really,
it's
Mom?
like, it's. You mean I can say jackass? It's like
cock. Okay, that's too far, son. Too far. I just realized I just screamed cock, and I have neighbors with kids right next door. Oh no, I'm terrible. This is what Aaron drew.
Stupid little boys.
That's me. I'm a stupid little boy. So, and there's this great scene in a billiard hall where they're drinking beer and smoking and. Geppetto.
Well, yeah,
Pinocchio,
I mean,
Jiminy Cricket.
Jiminy. We're going through all the characters before we get the.
A lot of J names: John, Gideon, Geppetto, Jiminy.
Joachman,
Dromdrolly, John Stroh to jail,
Janice John,
Janis Joplin. So anyway,
there's a great scene where Jiminy is like going through the what seems to be abandoned.
It looks like a zombie, like a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Well, when we think about it, it's like this is probably the moment where we think a lot of time has probably passed, or these kids have just kind of like destroyed this theme park. But yeah, it looks like abandoned, like a zombie like area where things are broken down and everything. It's really creepy backgrounds.
Yeah.
And Jiminy's like, where'd everybody go? This place is like a graveyard. And he's walking through, and then we pass like the billiard table where Lampy and Pinocchio are inside.
Drinking beer, playing pool, and smoking cigars.
And they're being stupid little boys.
And then Jiminy comes in and is like, how do you expect to be a real boy? You know, smoking, and he's...
that cigar where he's like, you smoke like my grandmother, take a real drag, and then...
That's right out of a Donald Duck cartoon.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you smoke like a man, see? Smoke
like a man!
And then he breathes it in, and there's a great scene where Pinocchio, and he turns like 3 or 4 different colors. Green, purple, pink, and...
basically, he's sick.
And then, he's sick.
He's allergic.
And then, Pinocchio, because Jiminy Cricket's like, get out of here. He's like, but Lampwick's my best friend. He's like,
your best friend?
What am I? And what am I?
What am I? You're God.
Abusive relationship.
Yeah.
I spend, and this is the thanks I get from being saving your life. Mm-hmm. And so he leaves, and then he discovers that all the boys have been turned into donkeys by the coachman and this gorilla people, his boogeymen.
Yes.
And so then he goes back and asks...
The bye men.
Yeah. Anyway, so he goes back, and this is a great scene of tension. There's like a race against time kind of moment where he goes back, and Lampwick is turning into a donkey like before.
This is the scene that I always saw like on Disney Channel where it was just like,
heartwarming.
Oh God, this is creepy.
Yeah. And so then he gets turned into a donkey. It's a really horrific scene. The score is absolutely horrifying. It's almost Hitchcock-like. Yeah. Really frightening stuff.
Didn't you say that the score to this movie got like...
I think it won. I know the music won an award, but I don't know if... I think the score did.
Yeah.
And it
is really good music.
It's so powerful. Yeah. Great stuff. So Jiminy Cricket rescues Pinocchio. And
just in time, I guess.
They dive into the water and swim to shore.
Yeah, they got to get out of here.
And the thing I noticed is that when you really think about it, compared to other Disney villains... all the villains in this movie are still out doing horrible things. They never get a comeuppance. They're still out in the world.
Coachman's still looking for stupid little boys.
And Amish John and Gideon are still conniving people, and Stromboli's still an asshole. And later on, there's this whale that's still going to be terrorizing the oceans and swallowing
I still think that whale is dead.
That whale is not dead. That whale crashed through solid rock earlier in that scene.
Yeah, but I don't know. That was a bigger rock. I think that whale is chum.
No, if you run headfirst into a wall, you won't be dead. You'll be in a lot of pain, but you won't be dead.
All right.
Either way.
Okay. It could be still out there. We haven't gotten the sequel yet to decide.
We got it. You're right. We do have a sequel. It's Pinocchio in Outer Space, and there's a space whale, a radioactive space.
Oh, that's right. Monstro turned into a space whale. That's right. Yes. I forgot. Oh,
Jeopardy.
Well.
Anyway, so Either way, they go back and they realize that Geppetto is gone. But that's the thing that does bother me about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with the talking fox and the cat. I'm fine with the suspension of disbelief. I'm fine with the Deus Ex Machina, Blue Fairy coming in and saving them whenever they need them. Especially in this scene, because she appears as a dove and drops a note to tell where Geppetto is. There's no real indication of the passage of time.
Yeah.
Like, they go back and there's cobwebs in their...
No, I agree, because to me, watching this movie feels like it's in the span of 2 days. But
not a lot happens, but they're gone. They feel like they're gone for ages.
But no, well, they act as if they've been gone for like months.
And even Geppetto says, "Not to bite for days."
Yeah, it's like, how long have you been in there?
I even built a raft. It's like, how long have you been here?
Yeah, there is like very when in terms of time, it's all up in the air. You don't know how long, but it really feels like, to me, it just felt like this happened in 2 days. It's like, Jesus, Geppetto, it's like you 1 day without Pinocchio and you're off like getting eaten by a whale and you built a raft.
Yeah, I'm desperate.
Yeah.
So they go and Pinocchio is really gung ho about saving his father.
Yeah, he's like, I'm kind of done with this.
Well, he's actually really he's being brave and unselfish.
Mm-hmm.
And he's even that great scene where he's like, "Goodbye, Jiminy." He's about to shake his hand, and he's like, "Goodbye. I might be lying bait down there, but I'm going with you." It's a great little moment between these two characters because they're there the whole time.
And Pinocchio, he basically ties his tail to a rock so he can keep himself down onto the ground when he goes into the water. And I can understand a wooden boy not breathing, but Jiminy is also down there, and there is no indication that he can breathe.
And also, there's another thing too, is that there's a scene where he's in a bubble, and then it's filling up with water, and he's panicking, like as if he's going to drown.
Yeah, it's like you're already underwater. It's like that moment was just like for the spectacle of that.
Yeah, that whole scene was like, "Where's Monstro? Uh-oh, scared fish."
Yeah. The whole time where they're underwater and there's fish around and everything, it's like it's to stretch the time out, but it also feels like it's just for the spectacle of it.
Yeah.
Just the fact that they can do that. And then we see Geppetto inside Monster as well. It's like, not to fish for days. We're not gonna make it. Oh God, I haven't eaten since 5 hours ago.
And then you see Monstro, and Monstro is he
looks like a blobfish.
He's a literal beast, but at the same time, in terms of animation, a fucking beast. Like the way
he takes up like 75% of the screen when he's around.
But on top of that, just the way they animate, they put like charcoal. They used something called wash off relief cells, which had a bit of a tooth to it.
Yeah.
So they could put like Conte crayon on it and get this nice kind of charcoal look.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
It is amazing.
And it looks so good. And the thing is, the guy who animated it even said like all of his stuff was distorted for Snow White and all the other stuff. Mm-hmm. Imagine animating this big character and having the character pretty much being covered in either bubbles or waves or water or seagulls, just completely obscured. So all that hard work you put into animating this character is just completely covered up.
I'm really curious about all the other films that came out before or around the time Pinocchio came out, because when you think about it, at the time it was made, this is the most action-packed conclusion to a movie, like to an animated movie of that time that I can think of, because there's so much movement and so much action. It's like, I'm really curious.
Scale, like in animation, scale is never an issue.
Yeah.
You can have giants and battles and explosions and things like that.
I'm really curious how the people felt in the theater, like watching that, like how tense they must have been watching like a huge, gigantic animated whale like scream through water, and then we have like our heroes basically frantically trying to get away from it, and it's like, to me, it feels, that entire scene is really tense.
Yeah.
How they're trying to escape from Monstro, and it's just like, wow, I can only imagine what it was like back then, because I don't really think there was anything else like that.
Because we're desensitized because we've seen a lot of stuff that's even grander than that.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the time period, probably the biggest spectacle at the time in terms of that was maybe Wizard of Oz,
right?
Snow White before it, and then maybe King Kong, in like the early 30s.
And King Kong is just like, there's not a lot of movement in it. it's many. The spectacle about that is that they're static shots, and you see like this animated gorilla, and that is fantastic for the time. But it's like there's no movement in it. You know, it's just like you just see the gorilla like swiping at planes and everything. And then
fighting dinosaurs.
And with this, it's like the camera's like following Pinocchio. It's following Monstro as the Monstro is like making this kind of like U-turn against the water, which is like really cool. I love that shot.
You feel that weight.
Yes, yeah.
And I know if it was made today, they would have added let's add a car screech sound.
I almost feel like there was one. You kind of hear it. It's like
I think that was me in the background doing that.
Oh, really?
I was just going.
There's some sort of noise I hear like when Monster does that. But yeah, it's really an amazing scene, you know, like looking at that and thinking like, dear God, all of the particles from the water and how like
the waves.
The waves are just taking over all of the animation in that.
It makes it doesn't make my stomach drop. It actually excites me, but it just makes my brain melt. Just thinking about having to animate water. And there were people who would animate just bubbles on those movies. Like they were just bubbles. Mm-hmm. They would just spend a whole movie just animating bubbles.
Yeah.
It's incredible how beautiful that scene is and how powerful the score is driving, and you really feel the tension.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of it, you get that nice quiet moment where there's no music at all, where Geppetto's just on shore and the water's washing up against him.
Yeah.
And another thing too is that just like the nightcap thing earlier, Figaro and Cleo disappear.
I was saying that when you mentioned that, I was like, oh, they're in that case. They're in that box that's on the...
Well, at least they're safe. Wait a minute.
And then the tail of the whale just smashes on.
You died. You were like, oh my God.
Well, when before that happened, I was like, oh, well, at least Figaro and Cleo are safe.
Oh. Well... But then they appear later.
They appear later. It's one of those, oh, they're safe.
Yeah. And so you find out that Pinocchio is lying down, face down in water. Mm-hmm. Drowned? After being underwater?
Well, I'm very certain it was a huge impact that, like, drove him unconscious.
He got the bends from being underwater for too long and coming up too fast?
He is allergic.
Allergic? Stupid little boy.
He's a stupid little boy.
But then you cut to the house and they're all mourning him, kind of like the end of Snow White.
Yeah.
And the fairy's voice comes up and turns him into a real boy. And I'm just like in The Beast, and Beauty and the Beast, you're just sort of like, he's a real boy!
Yeah.
He doesn't look that great.
Yeah, it's like, I could have looked a little better, but whatever. He's a real boy. Geppetto's happy. So
I now feel pain. Look pretty. Ow!
Yeah.
Lights his finger on fire again.
It's like, I think I'm going to go in the ocean again. Or, wait, no, Pinocchio's probably, like, traumatized by water now. He's just like, I don't want to go anymore.
I don't like taking baths, Father.
I wonder if he's like...
Now, Pinocchio, don't you lie!
What if Pinocchio's like, now he's a real boy and he's going through, and then Honest John and Gideon pass by and he's like, a regular little boy. A regular little boy?
That boy looks familiar. Then he takes him and knocks him on the head with his cane to see if he makes it made of wood. Oh, manslaughter.
I think we should go to another country. Gideon? Stupid little boy.
Oh man, and then there's a cute little moment where Jiminy Cricket is at the end and he's like, he thanks the fairy he thanks the star.
Yeah.
And then he's given his little conscience badge, which looks very sharp.
Yeah. It's like it's going to go against his chin and his neck. It's like, ow, ow, ow. And then we made that joke where it's like, well, time to go bother an old duck about Christmas.
Well, I've done all I can do here. I'm going to go over to this birthday party and watch Edgar Bergen and play the puppets at a little girl's birthday party and eat all their food and listen to tell creepy stories.
Jiminy Cricket just can't stay away from puppets.
You look familiar. Originally, they wanted Charlie McCarthy as Pinocchio. That was one of they had a meeting where it's like, why don't we just have Charlie McCarthy be Pinocchio? That would have been a completely different fucking movie.
It would have.
A little smart alecky. Because originally Pinocchio was going to be a smart alecky little kid. Like, that's not likable. He's not a likable character. We would rather make him naive. like a blank slate, than have him be
Yeah.
a little asshole because you don't sympathize with him. Just like in Alice in Wonderland. Originally, Alice in Wonderland was going to be a live action Alice in a animated world. That's what Walt Disney wanted to do. And then with when they did Gulliver's Travels at Fleischer, they wanted Gulliver to be played by Popeye.
Well, they kind of did that already. I think because of the Alice cartoons.
Yeah, it was kind of full circle, but he wanted to do a better version of that, like a more cinematic version.
I can understand. It's like, I can do it better now.
Yeah.
So.
And then the only reason they did it in the 50s was because they were like, let's just do it and get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Whatever. Because it's a hard film to adapt. But either way, that's Pinocchio.
Yeah, that's Pinocchio. So, Mike, would you recommend Pinocchio?
No, too scary for kids. No, it's one of my, definitely in my top 5 Disney movies.
Same here.
Beautiful movie.
I'm one of those people that it's just like when I think of like a really good classic movie, I think of Pinocchio, because just looking at that and the backgrounds and the spectacle of it, it's just so beautiful, and the colors are really well done as well, especially because it gets really dark.
There's so many things you can take away from it, between the animation, the delivery, the songs, the score, the animation, everything about it is fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect.
It's not.
But at the same time, I'm glad it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Because it's never, I mean, Pinocchio usually ranks at the top of many people's best animated films. A lot of people said it's the Citizen Kane of animated films. And I could see that.
But at the same time, it's like, I highly regard this movie, but I wouldn't say
it's no B movie.
I can't say.
It's no Rover Dangerfield.
Fuck you. I honestly, it's like when I think of this movie, I can't think of it as a perfect movie, because it does suffer from a few story problems, like the whole time thing.
Yeah, that's probably my one major issue with the movie. They don't really express how much time has passed in a lot of moments, and it's still really good. And I honestly feel there's one moment when Pinocchio is when he goes into Monstro and he's finally reunited with Geppetto, and there's that moment where he's just like, "What happened to you?" And there should have been a moment where Pinocchio finally fessed up, where he just says, like, instead of just like kind of like, fidgeting with his hands, he probably just should have says like, I went the wrong way, and I'm so sorry that I did. And there should have been that moment of like fessing up and being honest, because when he becomes a real boy and the blue fairy comes down and says like, what was it? You have to be honest, brave, truthful, and unselfish. And then I made a joke. It's like, well, you did 2 out of the 3, so here you go. Good enough.
Yeah.
Real boy power.
Yeah. So it's like, that there was that moment where it just felt like that could have been a little stronger. But honestly, visually this is a beautiful movie, and it's also really fun to watch. It has really cute characters. The animation on a lot of like on Jiminy, on Pinocchio, a lot of
Figaro
times,
is adorable.
Figaro is cute, yes. Stromboli alone is just worth it, just to watch all of the scenes that he is.
Him shaking his ass.
Saying
Constantinople.
And yeah, the subtle animation of Pinocchio, where it's just like he feels like a real kid. It's like how a kid is on stage on a school play, and it's just kind of like he's in front of thousands of people, and he's just like and he's fidgeting with his like pants, and just kind of like getting into it as he gets more comfortable with it. It's really well done.
Their game.
Yeah,
really.
A lot of really good animation in this.
Yeah.
So
that's really it.
Yeah, that's really all you can say about Pinocchio. It's if you haven't seen it already, go ahead, go see it. It's on Blu-ray now.
They just came out today, I think, on Blu-ray. You can get it on Blu-ray. You can get it on, if you have a Disney Anywhere app on your iPad. You can download it. It's great.
This is honestly, I would believe, on top on my list, honestly, of movies that you would have to see.
Yeah.
When it comes to animation, anyway. So that's it.
Pinocchio.
That's Pinocchio. And that's also it for us. If you would like to give us a good review, we're on iTunes and Stitcher. Please give us a favorable 5-star review. and write a little blurb about how much you like to listen to us, if that's true. If you are really being honest with us right now and just not listening to us because you hate us. God, I hate listening to these guys. I wonder what the other episode they make stupid things about.
Stupid little boys.
Stupid little boys. And also our Facebook page. You go to facebook.com/animatedanarchycast, which is probably the best way you can get a hold of us, message us, or find out updates about when we post a new episode and stuff like that. We are also on Patreon. Well, I am on Patreon. It's patreon.com/awd. If you'd like to give a little tip, it helps the show running. I know we need some more things for this because we're going to be. We have a couple plans this year about getting some more guests and and other things such as equipment.
Solid gold.
Solid gold, like what is it? The pin that says conscience on it.
Mine will say
those are expensive.
Mine will say unconscious.
Unconscious. Also, if you want to send us stuff that we can talk about, we have a P.O. box. So you can send it to Animated Anarchy, P.O. Box 10852, Burbank, California 91510. And with that, I think that's it for the show for now. I think we did okay for our first episode of 2017.
Just wait.
Yes, it can only go down from here. So we'll talk about another movie next time on our show, as we usually do. I don't know. Maybe next episode we'll talk about a live action movie or something. You think? You're looking at me like, what are you doing?
I look like,
where are you going?
You know
with
the
this?
girl who's crying in the car, and you pan over to the little sister in the stroller, and it's like looking at you like,
Yes. Well, that's it. I'm Andrew.
I'm Mike.
Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.